You're listening to NYCC and Me, a podcast on all things diversity and inclusion. Every episode, we speak openly and honestly with colleagues and guests, sharing knowledge, personal stories, struggles, and successes. If you want to know more about NYCC's diversity and inclusion journey and what it means for you, then stay tuned. Welcome to NYCC and Me. It's our first episode today, and on this episode I was really grateful to be joined by Barry Khan, who is the Assistant Chief Executive, Legal and Democratic Services. It was really great to have a chat with him talking about 2020 and also looking to the future and his creation of the Black, Asian and Minority Ethnic Employee Network and what the hopes are for that network. So please do stay tuned and I hope you enjoy. Thank you. Thank you for joining the first podcast of NYCC and Me, where we explore all things diversity and inclusion and feature staff voices. Really excited to be joined on our first episode by Barry Khan, who is the Assistant Chief Executive, Legal and Democratic Services. And a lot of the viewers probably already know who you are, but we really appreciate you joining for the first episode and excited to talk to you about all things 2020. I know we wish we were kind of over that now, but I do think it's a great way to start off the first episode with just some reflections and then looking forward to the future. So I guess to start off, how are you? How's everything?
Thanks, Francesca. No, I'm very well. I'm starting 2021 with the hope that this year is going to be a better year than last year. So really grateful to be invited. So thank you for inviting me. I'm of an age where podcasts are all a bit new and alien to me, so I hope you're going to be quite gentle with me in this kind of first interview, but no, very happy to answer any questions.
It's completely new to me as well, so I think we're on the same boat, but hopefully the viewers will enjoy this conversation nonetheless. So looking back on 2020, I guess for all of us is that one time that we can say we've really lived through history and this is going to go down in the history books. And I guess the most interesting thing about that has been the fact that so many of us are kind of going through a very similar experience across the world in that we're faced and continue to be faced with, unfortunately, this virus. Obviously, we all have different experiences of what that's like, but we still kind of share in that, I think common fear for our, safety, our family safety, and the hope that we can come out this other side more positive and better. I wanted to ask you about your experience of 2020, and was there anything in particular that actually energized you about the year that made you more hopeful, in a sense, in a time that's quite dark?
Yeah, it's probably a bit cliche to say, but I think what really kind of inspired me over 2020 was the speed of change that we all reacted, actually, as a council, as a society. I've seen things happen in the space of days and weeks, which normally would take months or years to do. So if you just look at the way that we've all embraced virtual working, embraced technology in a way that was really kind of strange to begin with, was all very new, and then very quickly became routine for lots of us. And then still seeing how people were doing frontline services, providing support to the most vulnerable and the needy in society, and what we do has been quite inspiring, actually. And lots of us work for local authorities because we genuinely believe that we want to do good to the public, and we very carefully spend the public purse in the right way. And then these kind of circumstances where we're all individually tested and tested as a teams and tested as organisations, it's made me really proud to kind of work for the council, to see what we've done and how we've reacted. So there's actually lots of things that have energised me, and I've used them, because there's lots of things that have been quite draining as well for 2020. So I'd be lying to say that I thought it was a great year and everything went well. It was a really difficult year. It was a difficult year for staff. It was difficult years for the public. It was quite a difficult year for me as well. So just reflecting on 2020. I saw how proud I was of the teams and how we all worked together, and also I've got 2 young children as well, and trying to educate them through 2020 has been difficult and interesting, if I can say that, but a real challenge. And like I say, I don't think I'm Ofsted outstanding as a teacher in any way, shape or form, and I think we've learnt lots of lessons. But I've also been really privileged to see more of my children this year than I would do normally. So less travelling, being around has been nice. It's been difficult during meetings when they burst in, but that's been really helpful as well. And then my own personal reflections. And I'm grateful for this kind of venue where we're talking about maybe how, for example, COVID has affected BAME communities more than it affected others as well. In November, at the end of November, beginning of December, spent a week in Harrogate Hospital in the COVID ward. So I was suspected to have COVID, and I was on oxygen and on morphine, and had a week in the COVID ward, seeing NHS staff working really in really difficult circumstances. So people on the ward were feeling the biggest impact of COVID and having the worst kind of effects, which was really heartbreaking to see. But then seeing the nurses coming in every day, doing really simple checks and tests to ensure that they had the PPE on and carrying on with a big smile on the face was inspiring, actually. Just seeing them, they're not being scared about coming into the COVID ward, just carrying on with their work, been living with it for months and months, and being really upbeat about how they're there to help people. So things like that and moments like that for me, whilst I was in a terrible state at the particular time, I take kind of a lot of comfort and a lot of inspiration from seeing people do that. And again, there's loads of examples within the council about how we've done that as well. So my reflections on 2020 is it's a difficult year. We've been tested, but lots of us have come out with flying colours. We've seen people really adapt to the challenge. And I would say we all have our weaker moments as well. So I had a number of moments where I wobbled in 2020, and my colleagues and my staff and teams have all been there to support me. And I think as a council, it's really important that we're there to support staff as well, and colleagues to see them through these difficult times. So I think that is probably too long an answer for what you wanted. But that's my 2020 about the things that I found draining and inspiring in 2020, and the things that keep me going in 2021.
Yeah, no, I find your kind of story really interesting, especially because you had that kind of direct experience on all angles, and you had to go through a situation that no one would wish to go through, but that that experience of during, I guess, the deepest hardship, still kind of learning from those things that are happening around you, and that appreciation that you find for your neighbours, for your family, for those special moments shared with people. I feel like that is very much kind of the silver lining, in a sense, that's come out of 2020, and hopefully is something that is not lost as we continue to move forward. That kind of community spirit, that kind of recognition of the extremely hard work that healthcare providers continuously are going through. And I guess kind of on that note, it's kind of related to what you've already spoken about, but if you could kind of point to one key thing that you feel like you've learned in 2020, maybe about yourself or just generally, that you feel like will live with you, I guess, as you continue on in the future.
A really interesting question. I think I don't spend enough time reflecting on my own actions, as it were, and what I learn about myself. I think I get to an age where I don't learn anything about myself, which is a really bad to be in. But for me, I suppose it is about connectivity, actually. It's about connecting, how we make connections and how important they are with your family, with your friends. So for me, for example, when I was in hospital and I wasn't allowed to see my family, that was a really testing time for me. And I've also got elderly parents as well, which I can't go and see now physically as much as I'd like to during lockdown as well. So I'm really grateful to live in a world whereby we've got technology which allows us to stay connected. So, we can Skype, we can FaceTime, we can contact people. And what's interesting for me is the psychology of actually having a FaceTime call feels a lot more connected than just a telephone call for me. So for myself, which surprised me, was about having a face-to-face contact is really valuable, even if it's a virtual face-to-face. Seeing somebody, seeing the facial reactions feels more of a physical interaction than I was expecting. And for me, it was kind of just recognizing that actually, when I work best, I always think I work best locked away in an office where I can come up with a solution by myself. And what time and time again I get proved wrong is actually what makes the best decisions. And when we kind of work at our best, for me, is when we're working part of a team, we're connected in a team. If we're doing it virtually, doing it by email, doing it over phone, we get a much better result. So it was kind of learning how even though lots of us are home working, and not forgetting the fact that we have many people still being a frontline staff, is about how connectively, when we work together, it's a lot better of a better output.
Yeah, definitely. I think I saw that because I only started in September, so my kind of experience of working at the council has been all kind of virtual. Just before Christmas, we were able to have like a very socially distanced meet with a small amount of the resource and solutions team, which was just so uplifting that you almost you forget what it's like to be able to see people face to face and how much you really appreciate that. And even though we've adapted to working online and we've done a really great job at it, it is kind of that, it takes you back to that kind of basic human need for physically seeing people. And I found myself, like, I'm fortunate enough to live with my family, so my mum and my dad and my sister are here, so there's people in the house that I can go to, but I do feel so much for those people that have been alone throughout this whole period, and that because you find yourself, you go further into yourself, and it makes it even harder to kind of come out of your shell a bit more. So I'll have sometimes I have to sit here for 5 minutes and psych myself up for a meeting just because that's the first time I'm speaking to someone outside of my household for that day, and it gets intense. So, but it is a real thing that I think to take away from this year is, do not underestimate the real value of connectivity and communicating with the people around you. And just kind of take us into the more joyous, I guess, side of things. Is there a moment that you can pinpoint, even though obviously you've had a really difficult 2020, is there a time that you can pinpoint where you felt some real joy or real pride? I know you mentioned pride in seeing the work of healthcare staff and just council staff generally, but I guess pride in yourself as well, like a moment that you thought, yeah, I'm doing well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of the kind of person that never trampled with self-doubt, so I think a bit of humility is quite good for me. But I'm just coming back on a couple of points you said. There's two kinds of people that my heart goes out to. One, people who are living by themselves during this time, and then making sure that they are connected. I think that is a really important message. And I also feel quite sympathetic for people that have started working for the council during COVID as well. So I've got some staff that have started as well, and they're always really upbeat about it, because it takes me a bit of time to get my head around how you start a new organisation without physically meeting people. But I'm really impressed with how resilient people are and how they've adapted, feel like they're part of the organisation, how they've been welcomed into the teams, even if it's purely remotely as well. So I think that's really nice to hear. You're a perfect example of someone who's started at this time and feel part of the team immediately. So I think that's really good, and that's also a good way of me trying to avoid the question. Can you remind me what the question is?
The moment that you felt the most pride or joy, even if you don't want to go too much into anything else.
The stuff that I feel really proud about is. And the stuff that is kind of the most difficult thing is about trying to, make sure I've got two boys, one's 8 and one's 6, about getting them educated during this period, about making sure that they're still kind of socially adapted, going through this time for children where, they can't go and mingle with other people has been really difficult. So I think I get a lot of pride from seeing how they're reacting and how they're resilient, and they'll have issues and their difficulties, and we try and work with it as a family, but I get a lot of pride from that. I also get a lot of pride from really silly things like we had our Christmas quiz, for example, where it's been a really difficult year for lots and lots of staff who have gone above and beyond what's called for, and they've worked really hard. And just to have a bit of time where people could let their hair down and just kind of engage as a team and just do something quite normal, even though it was all remotely and we weren't in the same room, it was just really nice to just kind of see the team interact together. Because the thing that we're missing as part of the team, so I'm responsible for legal and democratic services, and we generally work in a couple of big rooms and kind of mingle together, and that's been missing. So if you have members of staff, sometimes you won't speak to other members of staff that you come across on a day-to-day basis. So everybody getting together and just having a general chat is a really nice thing to do, and it's something that you really have to work on nowadays, don't you? So It doesn't happen naturally. So I get a lot of pride from seeing how well the team are reacting on a personal level. It kind of fills me with a lot of energy and kind of keeps me going, as it were. So I think that that really kind of inspires me.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you spoke actually earlier, which I kind of want to come back to just as we move into our second, I guess, segment. You mentioned about, you know, the disproportionate effect that COVID has had on the Black, Asian and minority ethnic community. And I wondered if, you know, given 2020 with Black Lives Matter and a range of other kind of high level issues that have happened in the world, whether that is something that you feel like has really impacted your 2020 in terms of what your vision is for 2021, and on a personal level, I guess, as well.
Yeah, no, it is, again, a really insightful question. So for me, so if I can just talk about very selfishly about my own background. So my parents were born in India during partition when Pakistan was created. They moved to Pakistan. My dad was from a quite a humble background, in the sense that they didn't have much money. So when he was 16, he had to leave home because they couldn't afford to feed all the children. So he had to join the Air Force. And at 16, he joined the Air Force, and then a part-time studied law as well, and really kind of pushed himself to get a law degree. And then in the 60s and in the 70s, actually, England put a message out to Pakistan, were saying they were looking for workers, for people to come from that area to come to England and work. And my dad then did that in the 1960s. And when he came here, he faced kind of a lot more racism, a lot more challenges than I've ever had to face, to be fair. But really interestingly, he was a really keen hockey player. So through his hockey arrangements, as it were, he just happened to be on the same hockey team as the director of Children's Services in the 1960s. Wow. And through that kind of network, he got a job as a school teacher. And then he went on to become a lecturer and then became a professor of law. And what he kind of really instilled in me is that, well, first of all, the love of the law and the love of rules, and also about trying to overcome inequalities as well. So, you know, as an Asian person, so I was born in this country for the majority of my life, brought up in this country, and we lived in an area where I was definitely part of an ethnic minority. There wasn't that many people from my background in that area. So I had a really fascinating upbringing whereby, you know, within the English community, I was, you know, I made friends, but I did face racism, and, you know, having a brown face and a bunch of white English people was a bit different anyway. So, you know, I was never quite, you know, English enough to fit fully into that kind of society, according to some people. And then back in my, you know, Pakistani Muslim community, I was always seen, because I wasn't brought up in a big Asian area, as maybe being a bit too English to kind of fit into that kind of society. So I had this wonderful world of being able to draw from two cultures, but also with, you know, a potential not being able to fit into either of them. So I kind of grew up with that kind of background. And actually what I saw in that, in my kind of upbringing, is prejudices in both types of society. There were real assumptions made in both areas, actually, and it was fascinating to be part of both and to kind of correct some of those prejudices as far as I could. So from my point of view, you know, just coming back to the Black Lives Matter bit, it really resonated with me with regards to, you know, a sense of inequality and a lack of equal opportunities that some people face in this country and around the world. So seeing how what was happening in America, and then seeing how it resonated with us as individuals within the UK, was really powerful to me. And I saw 2020 as a particular point in time where some of those historic inequalities were being addressed face on, and it was some really uneasy conversations. And I took part in some really uneasy conversations. But I welcome it. So I've always been really open to a conversation about race, about ethnicity, and I welcome it. And I think that, you know, unless you talk about it, unless you understand it, unless you develop an empathy from living in, you know, somebody else's shoes, you're always going to have a problem of racism. You're always going to have a problem of prejudice. So for me, I saw 2020 as a continuation of a conversation I've had all my life. I think it was just advertised better, so more people were having that conversation. So I thought that was a really interesting way that 2020 developed. But it also kind of led to a lot of misconceptions as well. So, you know, there was also, you know, I've heard it, concerns about saying, oh, well, you know, is this about trying to give some people unfair advantages about treating people differently. And again, I have a very simple view. We're all entitled to our own views, but for me, it's always about a chance of equal opportunities. And equal opportunity doesn't mean treating people the same, doesn't mean not seeing people's ethnicity or their colour. So I have a lot of people that say to me that they're colourblind and they don't see colour, which is quite ironic to me because I am actually colourblind. I'm red-green colourblind. But more importantly, I want you to see my colour. It's part of me. I am a brown individual. I'm really proud of the colour of my skin and the cultural significance it has. And I'm happy to have a conversation about it. I'm happy to talk about it. But I do recognise that now I'm in a very privileged position. I have a very privileged role within the council, and I am in a position where I can have a very easy conversation about race. I do recognise that that can be really hard for other people. So other people that have just joined the organisation or have managers that might not be so sympathetic. It can be a really lonely and hard place, because I've been there and I've seen what that's like. So for me, and part of the reason I think you're inviting me to have this conversation was part of the work of the council creating a group, a network whereby we can look at issues that affect people from ethnic minorities. So we have something called the BAME group, and again, names are important, and we'll debate the name of what we call it. But for me, it is about getting employees that are from ethnic minorities together to provide a network of support to, one, support each other, but also to see what we can do and tell the organisation what it's like to be an ethnic minority working for the council and what we can do to improve it as well. So it all started from a conversation that we had at management board. So it wasn't my idea to create the BAME network, to be fair. It was actually a management board decision which said, actually, what we need to do as an organisation is to listen to employees from different backgrounds. And whilst it's all very well us as a management board, as senior managers in the organisation coming up with what we think are great ideas, it'd be much better if the people that have actually lived that experience could get together and say what it's like and inform us what we need to do. So when management board were having this conversation, they were looking for volunteers to chair it, and I was, very happily volunteered, because as I was talking about my background, when my father came to this country, he faced lots of prejudice. He inspired me to be a lawyer, and part of the reason why I wanted to do law was to look at inequalities within our society and see how we can make those improvements. So from my point of view, with my background, I was really keen to be part and to chair the group, and also from a purely selfish reason, as the group have met a number of occasions. It's probably the most interesting conversation I have at work is about a bunch of people from different backgrounds coming together and talking about their experiences, their cultural wealth that they bring with them is easily the most interesting conversation I have. And it's about then expanding that conversation across the council overall. So I think it is a really important group. It's a really important conversation. And part of the Black Lives Matter and the 2020 has kind of acted as a catalyst for a whole range of organisations to bring this to the forefront. So sorry, a very long answer to a very simple question. So sorry, Francesca.
No, it was a great answer though, and I think really pinpoints the kind of connections and the impact that 2020 has had, and I guess the vision going forward. And I know when I joined, knowing that the BAME group had been set up was really exciting to see that the NYCC was taking seriously its journey towards, fostering more inclusion and giving a voice to staff members from Black, Asian, minority ethnic backgrounds. And I know that that's something that there is a real commitment to do across various different groups. So we're in the midst of setting up a disabled employee network with Charlotte Rowe from HAS helping to support develop that, and also we're looking to set up an LGBTQ plus network. So it's an exciting time in terms of staff engagement and staff voices, and I think for anyone listening to this and who has an experience or a story they'd like to tell, we want to listen to you. Your voice really does matter in this conversation, and this conversation can't be had without you. Essentially, you are not just part of the diversity inclusion journey of NYCC, but are actually, the captain of that ship, I guess, And so it is a really exciting time, and it's really exciting to see what you've built with the BAME network so far, and hopefully what that can become. And I guess kind of on that note, what would you say is if you could paint a picture to us right now about like the vision that you have for the network, what you can see it achieve, and these kind of things, what would that be? And I guess you've kind of referenced it, but what would you say to staff members, both from a BAME background, but also those from non-BAME background who maybe have questions about this and questions about whether it's really worth it and what impact it can have? I know that's a big question to ask. Lots of complex answers.
It's okay, right? So the way I try to answer that big question is with regards to, first of all, the vision about the BAME group. Yeah. So I think, the BAME network group for me, an effective group would be a group which comprises of people from a variety of backgrounds that would support each other, that will then provide feedback to the organisation about what it can do more to be more inclusive, whether it's inclusive amongst staff, inclusive among the public that we deal with, about ensuring that there are an understanding of different cultures, of different backgrounds, and a real kind of celebration of it as well. So it's not something that we should see as a bit of a bolt on about saying, oh, well, do we need to know about, for Muslims, celebrating Eid or learning about other different cultures, but it's a real celebration of it, saying, actually, we want to embrace it. We actually, as a council, serve the public, and the public are constituted of a variety of different backgrounds, and it's about celebrating those and realizing we're a better society because of that richness of culture that we bring. And so this is one of the great reasons why I enjoy living in this country, why I enjoy living in this county, is the fact that we can embrace all people's differences. So it's about doing that. But it's also about, dealing with some real serious issues as well. So I've been very lucky in my time in North Yorkshire that I faced no direct racism from my colleagues. But speaking to other people across the county, they're not in that same privileged position. So it's about saying and recognising that it is an issue, and about what we need to do more to it. So it's not just a group of people just getting together and patting ourselves on the back of saying, isn't it great to work for the county council? Don't get me wrong, we have lots of people that are saying it is great, actually. The council does recognise my cultural needs. It does allow me to be flexible with regards to that. But we also have people that say, well, actually, do you know what? Coming into this particular area, I found these difficulties. I find it really hard to speak to my manager or my colleagues, or they make presumptions about me, or they make presumptions about my religion just because of the colour of my skin. We do reflect society, and people will make those kind of presumptions, and we need to kind of tackle that. So my vision for the group will be about getting as many people involved with it, but also about it not operating in isolation. I have lots of people from a white background saying, well, actually, what can I do? Well, actually, you can do loads about inclusivity. It's about making sure that we all kind of own this agenda. What we're doing with regards to the BAME group, though, is getting people from different backgrounds together, first of all, because we've never had that kind of combined voice. So it's giving us the voice to be able to say the things that we need to be able to say in a safe environment, and then expanding that conversation in a wider environment. So I think that's answered some of your questions at least, but happy to expand on anything.
No, that definitely has, and it's really interesting, and I think also inspiring to listen to this and to kind of that vision. I think for the future is something that I was surprised at when I joined, that there was a real drive for change and for inclusion and diversity to be kind of put on the agenda and with an importance placed around it. I've spoken to a lot of staff members through my role who are working kind of off their own, initiative to do things such as the anti-racism workshop that's happening in HAS. There's some really exciting things and some really exciting opportunities for change, and I think that momentum will hopefully carry us through 2021. And I think it's, when it comes to diversity and inclusion, it's recognising that it's not just about certain groups of people. It actually is about us all, and it has the diversity and inclusion conversation includes everyone and is important to everyone, and it is important to the council itself for our own success. And I think you really kind of brought that to attention in what you were saying, and I guess to kind of close, a bit more explicit, I guess, what kind of message would you have to people from Black, Asian, minority ethnic backgrounds who maybe are considering a move to North Yorkshire? I know, like with COVID-19, a lot of people are thinking, oh, is city life really for me? I think I need some greenery. So maybe considering a move to North Yorkshire, or even just, you know, staff members that are currently working for the council who feel a bit detached and feel that they don't really have feel a sense of community, especially with working from home. I guess my question is, again, I guess it's a hard one, but what would your message be to them?
Thanks, Francesca. A really difficult question. I don't think I can speak on behalf of all the BAME communities. Yeah. And I think the conversation we've had previously off air, as it were, is the fact that, you know, when we talk about Black, Asian and minority ethnic community, there isn't one set of community, and the biggest misconception that you can have is that you have traditional white English people, and then you have another set of groups called BAME, which is everybody else, and they're two distinct communities. It is much more diverse than that within both groups, as it were. So, you know, within the BAME group, it will represent a whole range of different backgrounds. And again, we'll all have different views. So I don't think I can talk on behalf of all the BAME community. Yeah. But what I would say is that actually I've worked for a number of different authorities. I've lived in a number of different areas across the country. And North Yorkshire, for me, has been the best place that I've ever lived and ever worked. You know, I've got young children. I've married a white English girl, and you know, we have a range of diversity within my own family and my family networks. And I would not want to raise my children in any other place. So I think, with regards to the richness of living in North Yorkshire, I would say, but I think I'm biased because is that it is a great place to work. And with regard, and you know, it's probably not as diverse. So it's definitely where I live at the moment, there's not as many people from my background within my area, but what I found is that through connectivity, through technology, you can be a lot closer to your communities no matter where you live. And I think lots of people have found the benefits of living in more rural areas. I mean, you've got to be careful about North Yorkshire. We do have very kind of urban areas as well. So for me, answering your question, one, I would wholly recommend working and living in North Yorkshire. I think it's the best place there is. Secondly, with regards to then working for the council and being from an ethnic background, my own experience has been really positive, and I think it's about getting everybody together and recognising all the experiences and seeing as a council we've got a real willingness to learn and to change and to react and to provide support to staff. And I think that you know, for me, is the most important message you can get from any organisation. As an organisation, we're always going to be learning. We might get things wrong along the way, but as long as we're committed to going in the right direction, I think that's going to be really important for us. And you know, we've seen a number of organisations kind of trying to be more diverse, and they talk about conscious bias and unconscious bias. And for me, it's about really kind of owning the agenda and not just using terms as a way of justifying previous kind of actions, but as having a real understanding of what are the issues that people are facing. How can we make sure that the organisation reflects its communities? How can we make sure that we're more welcoming to a diverse range of people? And it's not because that's the right, you know, it's a good thing to do by itself. It's because we'll provide a better service for it. We will actually provide a service that reflects the communities that we provide services to.
Yeah. Well, your answers are brilliant, and really, like, they bring a lot of different things to the audience. And I think that point on, you know, that diversity and inclusion is not just something you do because it's the right thing, even though that should be the central kind of pusher, but that diversity and inclusion is something that actually has a real benefit to how we relate to service users and how we perform as a council. And I think that is a really, you know, core message to put across. And I really want to thank you for joining this this podcast. It's been, I found it a really interesting discussion, and I've really, you know, taken a lot of value from a lot of the words that you've said. And really appreciated you know, sharing your experiences and sharing your, you know, your reflections.
Well, I apologise to the people if I bore them. At least I've got one happy listener, as it were. But no, really grateful, Francesca. And again, I think the people would be really interested about your background as well, and about, because you're obviously really passionate about this subject, and it's kind of infectious with regards to your enthusiasm about it. So I'm really grateful that you invited me to this podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to this episode of NYCC and Me. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to keep up to date with any new episodes or be part of the D&I conversation more widely, please do join the NYCC and Me podcast Yammer page. Hopefully see you next time.